with the goal. Goalkeeper missed it. Fight him. He does the right hand, and down goes Paul straight away. That's man. Oh, what a point to end it on. So now here's this winner at the bench. Yes, winner. 12 years for this. So drink it in. Still goes to one. What he loved to be immortality as an athlete. 19.79. It's a goal. It's a goal. With the goal. Goalkeeper missed it. Fight him. He does the right hand, and down goes Paul straight away. That's man. Oh, what a point to end it on. So now here's this winner at the bench. Yes, winner. 12 years for this. So drink it in. What he loved to be immortality as an athlete. 19.79. It's a goal. It's a goal.
Welcome to yet another exciting edition of Sports Extraordinary Weekend Edition here on Atlantic Television. And this very edition of the program, our focus will be on the National Youth Games. So of course, you know the 7th edition of the National Youth Games has come to an end in Delta State, Asaba. Look at how the teams have performed and see what to come next. And of course, there's been hue and cry in Manchester. Yes, the city of Manchester, it has been hue because both teams have lost their games this weekend. It's a weekend of a lot of mixed results, and we'll bring all of them to you from among the top leagues across Europe. Then on the home front, the Nigerian Premier League for 2023-2024 football season gets underway this weekend. Look at how the teams have performed equally. So it is a bumper edition of a weekend edition of Sports Extraordinary here on Atlantic Television Network. So we urge you to sit back and enjoy after this very short break. With the goal. Goalkeeper missed it. Fight him. He does the right hand, and down goes Paul straight away. That's man. welcome back. Sports, I say weekend Sports Extraordinary here on Atlantic Television Network. And how would be Kingsley Manuel this weekend?
Thank you very much for having me, Siri. Very happy to be here this weekend.
Talking about this weekend, it promises to be special because our focus will be on the top European leagues, how the teams have performed. If you follow the Premier League in England, Manchester City right now is in hue and cry this weekend because there has been a double loss. But just before we look at that, the 7th edition of the National Youth Games here in Nigeria has come to an end in Delta State, Asaba to be specific. And Kingsley, this game has been on in the last 8 days, and it looks like it is now come and gone, you know, in some kind of an atmosphere of pomp and pageantry because the teams seem to be satisfied with the position on the medal table. Which team has, which state has led and won the 7th edition of the National Youth Games?
From what we've seen so far, Delta State, of course, they've actually done well this time around. So despite the fact that I guess they've been dominating in the various editions of the National Youth Games, this time around they stood their ground, you know, to clinch, you know, the first position when it comes to the medals standing as it is. And they actually led, you know, from start to finish, you know, from what was seen at this moment. So for me, I think Delta, they've really done well for themselves. They participated well, you know, in different competitions. And from what we've seen so far, I think they actually had very huge preparation, you know, coming down this one. I think Edo State, last time we checked, you know, were second. They actually took down, you know, Lagos from the second position. But we'll definitely bring, you know, the standing as it is because we've actually gotten it now. So for me, I think Delta State, they actually put up a very, very impressive performance to stay top from start to finish.
Is this another case of hosting to win? Was there any kind of home advantage over the leadership of Delta State on the 7th edition of the National Youth Games? Because a lot of people think that if you host, then you're sure to emerge as first place state.
Yeah, I think Delta State were very much favored because if you take a look at it, especially when it comes to overage athletes, we've got to report that, you know, majority of the athletes, you know, were overage, and that's why they have advantage, you know, in some of the sports. You know, we saw them participated. Some of the teams, the other states, you know, were complaining that Delta States, you know, were parading overage athletes, and that is more of the reason why they were doing well, you know, in different sports. So even as when some of the athletes, you know, were being screened, we still saw those athletes being admitted back, you know, into the contingent, and they have to participate at the end of the day. So that's, you know, home advantage, or probably, will I say, that bit of advantage when it comes to the overage aspect, actually give Delta State, you know, that bit of momentum in putting up their stand and also emerging, you know, first in this particular edition. So just like you mentioned, hosting and being a most of winning based on the fact that you're the host, I think for me that's what we saw actually played in this 7th edition of the National Sports Festival, or the National Youth Games.
Well, I think preparation was part of a reason why you have a Delta State. They had early preparation. They were not only preparing the facilities and the venue for the games, they equally had prepared the athletes, and so I think that they are deserving of emerging as the number 1 place team in the National Youth Games. This is a game for the under 15. Do you think we had less issues with the age of the participants of this year's National Youth Games?
Yeah, I think there were a whole lot of, you know, age issues. The Minister of Sports, John Owan, you know, actually introduced the use of the NIN this time around in terms of screening the athletes.
Not the national identification.
Yes, not the national identification number, no longer the facial expression, you know, method of screening athletes. But still yet, you know, the NIN, that's the national identification number, you know, still couldn't help because we still saw some states, you know, parading some overage athletes, especially, you know, Delta State. That just were very alarming because a majority of the sports, you know, we saw Delta State, of course, you know, had, you know, overage athletes. And I think the Athletic Federation of Nigeria were able to do a little bit of work, you know, by laying their hammers, you know, on some of these athletes that are overage, you know, in this edition of the National Youth Games. So for me, I think the rate at which, you know, we saw overage athletes in this one is a bit alarming. But thank God the NIN was able to reduce, you know, the rate at which, you know, some states, you know, parade overage athletes, but still not enough. And there's still much work for the Athletic Federation of Nigeria, the Sport Ministry, of course, to do when it comes to competition like this, for we to see, athletes between the age range of 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 to 15, of course, participate, in this event. The main purpose of the events is to unearth talents, not necessarily, to win, not necessarily to, get medals at the end of the day, be it gold, silver, or bronze. But the main purpose is to unearth talents. That's the essence of the National Youth Games. So I think the state should take away pride, on this aspect, take away that fighting spirit, take away that level of being rigid and trying to come up with over each athlete to make sure they win by all means. It's just for, the country to unearth talents in this particular, event. And I think that's the main purpose. So the Sport Ministry and the Athletic Federation of Nigeria, I think they still have a whole lot of work to do to make sure that in competitions like this, we don't see states parading over age athletes.
States are not expected to put up athletes that are above the age of 15 because this is the National Youth Games aimed at discovering talents, and such talents will be honed alongside their age. And so if you parade overage athletes, then the purpose of the game has been defeated. New sports minister, believes that with the national identification number, the age of these athletes could be better ascertained than just mere official look or expression showing how old an athlete is. And so I think we seem to have improved a little bit. There should be more ways, better ways of ensuring that the athletes are within the under 15 range, which is meant for the games. But for the 2023 edition of the National, 7th edition of the National Youth Games, it is now come and gone, and Delta State will emerge winners. Edo State in the second place position, and then Lagos State is in the third place position. They are closely followed by Bayelsa and Ogun State. How has Team Rivers performed so far at the end of the games?
Not really an impressive, performance, from Team Rivers. They didn't start well, and I think that's actually their shortcoming in this edition for the National Youth Games. When they started, we saw them, they actually stepped up to 15th position, and gradually we saw them coming up to 14. And at the end of the day, we saw them, coming up 8th position, as it stands. Not really, a performance we saw from Team River, but I think there were days in the championship that they were able to grab a lot of medals, especially when it comes to athletics. I think day 5 was really their day. They grabbed about 4 gold medals on that particular day, and that actually gave them a leap. But I think for me, from the strength we saw from the contingents from Delta State, and talking about Lagos, Edo, and Bayelsa, I think we really saw top-notch preparation from this state. The athletes were very much, prepared
Nigeria, where we've seen so exciting goals. We'll start with the Premiership in England. Kingsley, it is week 7 in the Premiership in England, and some results has come tumbling in there this weekend. First, are you shocked that Manchester City, after playing 7 games, is losing their very first game? Their 100% record now has been, broken in the Premiership in England, because this weekend we saw them lose by 2-1. And wait for it, they didn't lose to one of the top side. They lost to Wolves. Wolves beat Manchester City by 2-1. No goal coming from Erling Haaland. And will you say because Erling Haaland didn't score, or because their coach, Pep Guardiola, was in the stand, haven't been sent to the stand for an early offense he committed, for today's game?
I think a whole lot, happened in that encounter for Manchester City. Things didn't really go well for them, The Erling Haaland, of course, wasn't really, on his best of form. Pep Guardiola on the other side as well. Sometimes when things happen like this, especially to the manager of the team, somehow it has a little bit, it has a way of actually affecting the performance, of the team in that particular encounter. And that's what we saw, happen for Manchester City in that particular game. I think there's actually something missing in that Manchester United side. Where you take a look at the midfield, yes, we've seen them playing some couple of matches without Kevin De Bruyne, but I think the place of Kevin De Bruyne is actually coming down, to show, at this point in time. Most of the time, when Kevin De Bruyne is not in that Manchester United team, Erling Haaland, find difficulty, to find the back of the net, and that's what we've seen, some couple of. And don't forget, this week as well, we saw them play against Newcastle in the Carabao Cup, and they lost. Newcastle actually knocked them out, of the Carabao Cup, and then coming down to play against Wolverhampton Wanderers as well, a team you should have at least capitalize on and get, the 3 points from. And we saw them, of course, falling short against Wolverhampton Wanderers. To tell you that, there is something happening now in that Manchester City team. If Kevin De Bruyne is back, and then we'll see, what comes up from them. But I think there is now a missing link, in the midfield. We didn't see the best of them today, and couple with the controversy we saw with Pep Guardiola as well, I think actually affected the psychology of the team to this encounter.
Well, it looks like Wolves are in cloud 9 today. They are beating Manchester City, for the first time in 6 games. This is the first time they are beating Manchester City, first time in 6 games. But something interesting happened at that the stadium today, where Wolves beat Manchester City. One of the former player, Matheus Nunes, had to go on strike for him to be transferred to Manchester City, and he started for Manchester City in that. And all of his moves in the first half, before he was substituted in the second half, was booed and jeered by the home fans because of the way he left the team. Does this send any lesson to players how they leave club sites? Because it looks like all through his 45 minutes on the pitch, all of his moves and were jeered and booed by the fans. And maybe that will have contributed to why he was substituted in the second half.
Definitely, because if you take a look at it, the man was so hungry to go down to Manchester City. I think he even skipped training. He even stopped going to training at Wolverhampton Wanderers just because of the fact that he wanted to leave, the team. And the fans, of course, wanted him, in the team. The board wanted him, but he was actually forcing his leave. And he left at the end of the day, going down to Manchester City, at this point in time. That's why we saw that boo, coming from the fans. Just like you mentioned, it's a lesson to other players. When you want to leave a team, make sure you leave well. Because at the end of the day, this thing find a way, of looking for you wherever, you are. And that's what we saw happen to Nunes, in that particular encounter.
While Manchester City lost to Wolves by 2-1, that match did take place in Wolverhampton's home ground. The other Manchester team, Manchester United, playing at Old Trafford, lost at home 1-0. That match ended. Kingsley, would you have expected, Manchester United to lose at home in this encounter? For me, it looks to me like a shocking result. I don't know what it is to you, because this is the first time in about 34 years that we'll see Manchester United in their worst possible start in 7 matches.
Yeah, it's actually a very, very disturbing one for Manchester United. Don't forget, they played the same Crystal Palace in the Carabao Cup this week, where they actually beat Crystal Palace as well. Now, coming down to the league, Crystal Palace actually put up a revenge, courtesy of that particular defeat, they experienced the Carabao Cup, as well. I think that shows the level of doggedness, from Crystal Palace as well. This is the second consecutive defeat at home for Manchester United, and it doesn't really speak well for Manchester United as a team that has spent a lot of money in acquiring players, the likes of Sancho, Højlund, the goalkeeper of the side, talking about Andrew Onana, and the rest of the players we've seen for Manchester United, Messi, Mount, you could mention. So for me, I think there's really a problem at Manchester United. Don't forget, before they won against Crystal Palace in the Carabao Cup, I think they lost about 3 consecutive games. That was a very, very huge set for United. Coming back to the league again and losing is not what the fans expect, not what football lovers at this point in time, football faithfuls of Manchester United. So for me, I think it's really, really a disappointing result that we actually expected from level of get them down. For me, I think it's a disappointing result for United.
Very disappointing result for Manchester United, first time in 7 years. And that is their worst possible start in 34 years. I hope that Manchester United will find a way to bounce back, because with the way it is going now, it looks a very troubled time for Manchester United. Still looking at the Premiership for you this weekend, Aston Villa beat Brighton by 6-1. That's a very shocking result in terms of number of goals. Brighton so far has shown some promise this season, but going to the Villa Park, they capitulated, and we saw Watkins score a hat-trick in this encounter. We're hoping that Aston Villa can do this number of goals in 90 minutes plus against a team who is so bright this season, like Brighton.
Yeah, I didn't see that coming. I didn't see that score line coming for that particular encounter. When you take a look at Brighton, they have some impressive players in the team. Though not world-class player, not that top player, but at least the players down there are able to pull some level of strength, especially the man that just came from FC Barcelona, talking about Ansu Fati. We haven't really seen much from Ansu Fati.
Ansu Fati today scored his first goal for Brighton. He joined in, like you said, from Barcelona, and much has been expected from him, but today was his very first Premier League goal for the team. But that one goal was not enough to help his team get back at Aston Villa that scored 6.
It was more like a consolation goal, for Brighton after they were being trashed with that high score line we saw from Aston Villa. I never expected such results, from in that particular encounter. Yes, Aston Villa, one team, of course, that have actually showed more progress since last season, since Unai Emery, actually took over. We've seen them, put up some level of resilience as well. But against Brighton, which we know that yes, they've been, very, very fantastic, over time. I didn't expect that kind of scoreline.
This is the first time in their entire football history in the Premier League where they will concede as many as 6 goals. The first time in their Premiership history to concede 6 goals. But Aston Villa right now is placed 4th, and Brighton is, 3rd on the league table.
I think, yes, if you take a look at it, Brighton, they've done well. At least they've actually contend strongly with some teams, especially the likes of they beat Manchester United this season. And they've gotten some couple of impressive results as well in their previous matches. I think that's why, of course, they are 3rd. But if they continue like this, I don't think Brighton will be contending favorably this season in the English Premier League. It was really not a result so many persons expected, talking about them being beaten by 6-1 by Aston Villa.
Aston Villa scoring 6 goals past Brighton, that are presently 3rd on the league table, while we have Aston Villa in the 4th place position. But before we just get out of that, Ole Watkins, I tell you, scored a hat-trick in that fixture. Has it anything to do with the fact that we had Southgate, the English manager, in the stand watching the encounter?
Maybe somehow just to impress the manager, to show the manager that he's really in a top form. Of course, when it comes to national team selection, he might be considered, at this point in time. Watkins, of course, always try as much as he can to show himself in matches like this. But of course, getting that hat-trick, I think, was a very huge one for him. Going forward, I think that might probably be a morale booster, for him, and as well as the Aston Villa side.
Aston Villa beating side Brighton by 6-1. First time Brighton will lose that number in the Premiership history. Let's take a look at one other encounter we saw this weekend in the Premiership, and it has to do with Luton Town. They beat their opponent Everton by 2-1, and a away win there for the new entrance into the Premiership football. Everton, playing at their own stadium, could not do much. They lost by 2-1 to Luton. This is Luton's first win in 7 games. So out of the 3 teams that promoted to the Premier League this season, Luton is now the very first to win 3 points after 7 games.
Yeah, I think it's actually cheering news for them. I think they've gotten a draw. They've gotten a point. This is the first 3 points, they are getting, after 7 games. I think it's a little bit of relief, for Luton Town. They've been struggling ever since. But I think it's a sad one for Everton because Luton Town is the team you're supposed to beat. We've seen Shandike, and his men trying to pull up some impressive results, over time. But coming up to lose against Luton Town is really not the kind of results we expected. But for Luton, I think it's a bit of relief for them, sharing results, to say, picking up that first 3 points since they made that return to the English Premier League. I think probably this might give them that relief and a bit of strength and a boost in their morale, to make sure they keep clean sheets in the coming matches.
First Premier League win for Luton Town on their return to the Premiership football, and that is coming after 7 games, and it has propelled them now to number 17 on the Premier League table. They can now have a platform to fight to avoid relegation?
Yeah, I think so, because we still have more matches. Just 7 games, done. We have about 33 games, to be played for this season. So I think Luton Town, they have every means, fighting, trying to make sure, they get out of relegation at the end of the day. They have everything. I don't see them being relegated if they continue to churn out these results, in any match, they find themselves, as it is. So for me, the door is very wide open at this moment. I'm not seeing any team going down to relegation. Both Sheffield and Burnley, I think the door is still very wide, for them to fight their way out of it. But I think it actually has to do with much determination, just like we've seen from Luton Town today.
What does it mean to Everton losing before their new owners, the American owners from Miami, were in the stand watching this encounter and they lost at home?
Yeah, I think for me it's actually disappointing. I think in the last couple of games, we've seen them try to churn out, some impressive results, but losing to Luton Town really, really embarrassing. And it's a message, to the new owners that we have to make sure we put up money in this team, to make sure we get the players that we need to be able to execute matches, because Everton, they've been struggling with the fact that they don't have enough money, to get the players, they want. I think now that they have a new owner, it's then time for them to go back, try to see how they can put this right, put in money into the team, get the best of players, and then, of course, see what Shandai could be able to do with the team.
Newcastle beat Burnley by 2-0, and it was the same scoreline between West Ham and Sheffield United, meaning that Sheffield United and Burnley are yet to win a game after 7 games in the Premiership in England, just being promoted to the top level. Can Burnley and Sheffield get maximum point just the same way we've seen of Luton Town today?
Let's see what comes up for Burnley. It's been a very huge struggle for them in the Championship. They were very, very fantastic getting that promotion down to the Premier League. But coming down to the Premier League, we thought at least they were going to replicate that same form. But it's been very, very difficult, and that shows you how intense the Premier League is. That you don't just come and start winning. You have to fight for your win. You have to fight for your 3 points, and that's what we've seen that Burnley and Sheffield United, they've not been able to replicate the form we saw at the Championship, as it stands. So for me, I think better days ahead for them. The door is still very much open. 33 games, await them, to play. I think they still stand a chance, of course, of fighting themselves away from relegation.
Well, after 7 games in the Premiership in England, the top-level teams are being separated by 1 point. Talking about top-level teams, Manchester City is leading on the league table with 18 points. Arsenal has 17 points after beating Bournemouth away this weekend by 4-0.
Yeah, well, sharing results, for Arsenal, despite, the injury worries for the likes of Bukayo Saka. Thank God Declan Rice, of course, was able to
Saka was on the score sheet today.
Yeah.
He came back and scored a goal. I think he scored the second goal for Arsenal. And we've seen a situation where this weekend we had some interesting result when it comes to scorers for Arsenal. Kai Havertz had his first goal, though this time coming via this penalty spot. Talking about Bukayo Saka, he gave him that penalty to take, just to maybe restore his confidence that after all, he's a goal scorer.
Yeah, I think for me, Arsenal, we can now boldly say that, Arsenal, they are one team that are ready now to contend, for the title. When you take a look at their level of resilience, just like I wanted to say, despite the injury worry for Saka, he was able to bounce back and, of course, get his name, into the score sheet as well. Kai Havertz, the man has not really been, himself since he came down, to Arsenal. And I think that penalty probably might give him that little bit of morale booster and try to put him right, in the team. For Declan Rice as well, is one player that have shown much resilience, for Arsenal since he came in. And I think Arteta actually, did a very good buy, during the transfer summer as well. Getting this players, I think it has really helped, the team, to be able to stand strong. And I think they're looking very set, to challenge, for titles.
Well, they're actually talking about Arsenal looking very set to challenge for titles. And right now, we've seen them, in some level of cruising because they've won by as many as 4 goals. Let's hope that when they return to the Emirates, they'll be able to check why they've conceded 3 times in the first minute of the season so far. Time for us to take a break. And when we return from the break, we'll look at what is happening in the Spanish La Liga, the French League 1, and the German Bundesliga as well. Talking about the Italian Serie A, Victor Osimhen is back on goal-scoring sheets as well. We'll look at how he will perform given the furore that has gone through the entire week, where he had issues with FC Napoli. Let's take a break. When we return from the break, we'll fill you in with results and outstanding highlights from the top leagues across Europe.
With the goal. Goalkeeper missed it. Fight there, but he does it right here. And down goes Paul straight away. Osimhen. Yup.
Welcome back. Sports Extraordinary Weekend Edition here on Atlantic Television Network. And together with Kingsley, we bring you up to speed with the latest happening around the world of sports. Just before we get to the German Bundesliga this weekend, we'll first of all take a look at the Nigerian Premier League, which got underway this weekend across Nigeria. We've seen 7 matches, kick off the 2023-2024 football season. Kingsley, these 7 matches have produced as many as 21 goals. And what a weekend to start with the number of goals we've seen so far. At the St. Cesar Stadium by Yelsa, we saw Aqua United capitulate in an 8-goal thriller. Bayelsa United beating Aqua United by 5 goals to 3.
Interesting one, and I tell you, it's really an interesting way, to start the league with a very huge number of goals. And of course, someone will say it's unlike the MPFL where you tend to see more number of goals, in the start, of the season. But I think for me, we've really seen changes, and for the teams as well, I think they've really taken time, to prepare. But I think we actually saw more home wins, in this particular match they won than their away wins, as it is. So for me, I think it's a good one. Talking about the home wins is something that is very regular in the league. I think as the season goes by, probably we might see more of the away wins. But for today's encounter, I think we'll see more of the home wins and a very huge number of goals. It's a very impressive way to start the season.
7 matches, 6 home win, and with just 1 draw. That match between Hadland FC and Lobby Stars ended in a 2-2 draw. Abia Warriors beat Niger Tornadoes by 1 goal to nothing. Then we saw Enugu Rangers overpower Doha United by 2 goals to 1. Katsina United beat Kwara United by 1 goal to nothing. And Shooting Stars beat Plateau United by 2 goals to 1. Sunshines were 1 goal better than Kano Pillars. And that's how the Nigerian Premier League got underway this weekend. Of course, owing to continental ties, Remo Stars was not in action, same as Rivers United, who have a continental CAF Confederations Cup match to play this weekend. So the encounter with Remo Stars did not take place. And we equally know that Insurance of Benin, who had this weekend been in Morocco for a CAF Confederations Cup game, which they eventually lost, was not in action too because they had Enyimba to contend with, but because of the continental tie, they are not a part of action. After 3 postponements, we thank God the leagues are back across various centers here in Nigeria.
Yeah, that's a very huge relief, for MPFL lovers. After numerous postponements, the league is finally back, and I think we should, start, seeing football down here in Nigeria in another level. We hear that the issue of sponsorship, was actually the reason why the league, suffered that numerous postponement. But thank God that the board, they were able, to put up that sponsorship deal right now, and we'll hope that, of course, that we'll see the matches, ongoing at the moment. I think some matches, of course, were streamed today, and it was really, really an interesting one.
Interesting fixture for Nigerian football with 2023-2024 football seasons getting underway this weekend, and I think it is a good one for those who follow football here in Nigeria. And talking about Nigerian football, this weekend has seen one of the teams at the continent, Insurance of Benin, crash out of the CAF Confederations Cup. They could not make it to the group stage, courtesy of defeat by RS Kenny of Morocco.
Yeah, everyone expected that because we didn't see, Bender Insurance, beating RS Bekene in Morocco. If they couldn't actually beat them, they were actually leading 2 goals to nil, at home. But they actually gave RS Bekene that chance, to, equalize. And going down to Morocco, it is always very, very difficult, for you to see, Nigerian team defeating them. And RS Bekene, they've once won the, CAF Confederation Cup. So they're no novice when it comes to this particular, championship. So for me, I think for Bender Insurance, they still have a whole lot to learn when it comes to, playing in the continent.
Difficult tie there for Insurance of Benin, but they are now crashed out of the CAF Confederations Cup. They have maybe next season to see whether they can come to the continent of Africa. But I think it's not been a very bad one for them playing in the continent just after returning to top-level football in Nigeria after nearly 3 decades of absence from top-level football. we've seen some action in the Bundesliga this weekend, and I don't know whether there's any particular one that caught your fancy result, because for me, we've seen Hoffenheim playing at home, being beaten by Borussia Dortmund by 3-1 this weekend.
Yeah, interesting result, of course. Taking a look at that particular one, I think exactly result we're expecting in the German Bundesliga. We'll always see surprises anytime. I think we'll see what comes up in their subsequent matches. So far so good. I think we've seen some impressive results coming from the German Bundesliga.
Well, do I say new team in the German Bundesliga beat Union Berlin by 1-0. Talking about Heidenheim, who beat Berlin by 1-0. Bochum beat lost to Mönchengladbach by 3-1. Cologne playing at home lost to Stuttgart. Stuttgart beat them by 2-0. Mainz were losers at home because they beat Bayern Leverkusen by 3-2. Bayern Leverkusen beat them by 3-0. Wolfsburg beat Eintracht Frankfurt by 2-0. And that's the outlook of fixtures this weekend in the German Bundesliga. Going across to Italy, the whole week I've seen Victor Osimhen as the most talked about footballer in the Italian Serie A. And this weekend we've seen him score another spectacular goal for his team, FC Napoli. He was not on the bench, he was not on the starting 11, but he came in the second half. And after spending only 6 minutes, Victor Osimhen scored the second goal for Napoli that beat Lecce by 4-0.
That shows he's a top striker. He's a striker that you don't have to play with. From the gesture we saw from Napoli this week, I think it has really been very, very disappointing for a player who helped you to win the Italian Serie A after 30 years of the club history. I think it was so disappointing that they were that they showed him that particular kind of gesture by putting that mockery video on their social media handle. I think Victor Osimhen has been able to silence his critics. Yes, he has actually experienced goal droughts, I think, for about 4 matches. But the game against I think the last 2 games we've seen him, of course, putting up who he is, and I think for me it's a very good way of trying to tell not the people down there in Napoli that he's still the best that he is.
Well, just before we see what has happened in the Spanish La Liga this weekend, we'll bring you some boxing story. And Alexander Usyk and Tyson Fury, we are told, will definitely fight sometime in December or early January in Saudi Arabia, of course, to determine which of them is the heaviest weight boxer of all time. You know that the 4 belts will be on showcase, and it will be the very first time the WBC belt, the WBA, WBO, and of course the International Boxing Federation belt will be on showcase. And these 2 fighters now have signed a contract for the fight to take place in Saudi Arabia on the 28th of December or sometime in January. Can this fight see the light of the day? This is the second time we'll have it postponed.
I think it will see the light of the day if the venue, has been agreed, and we'll still take a look at, they said it to be in Saudi Arabia,
right?
And let's see what comes up from here. We'll look forward to see how the negotiation will look like. The first one, of course, they couldn't actually put up the deal together due to the fact that Usyk, they not really agree, to the demand, from Alexander Usyk, at this point in time. But I think both boxers, they've been able to come together to try to make sure that this deal, see the light of the day. So we'll keep our fingers crossed. Maybe towards the end of this year, probably January, just like we'll say, we'll definitely see these 2 men, in the bout, trying to show what they know how to do best. It promises to be an exciting one to watch. So I think boxing fans, they've been anticipating this particular bout. And I think for me, it is very, very close that we're going to see these 2 men, throwing punches in the ring.
2 of the best heavyweight boxers you can find around in the world right now, Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk, definitely coming together to determine which of the 2 of them is the #1 heavyweight boxer. Quickly, we'll look at what has happened in the Spanish Liga. The highlight is that FC Barcelona continue to lead because they beat Sevilla by 1-0 this weekend.
Yeah, it was really a very intense encounter. We saw the teenager talking about Yamal was really, really fantastic, in that particular encounter. I think it was a tough game, and Barcelona, of course, were able to get that 3 points, through an own goal, from Sergio Ramos, coming back into the side, actually, got an own goal in that encounter, and that was how Barcelona were able to take 3 points, from that game. But it was a very beautiful game for the young boy, talking about Yamal in that particular encounter.
Well, time for us to wrap it up. This edition of Sports Extraordinary Weekend Edition, and our focus, our Sports Extraordinary this weekend is no other than Robert Mensah. Robert Mensah plays Premier League football for Bayelsa United. This weekend, which got underway or got started, he scored a hat-trick in that 8-goal thriller where Bayelsa beat Akwa United by 5-3. Robert Mensah with 3 goals. What a way to start the 2023-2024 Premier League football season here in Nigeria. An
impressive way, to start the league. First hat-trick, of the season. I think that will be registered, properly. I think it's a very good way, to actually, start, counting his goals. So we hope forward to see him, putting the ball into the back of the net in the subsequent matches to come.
Well, that will be it for this edition of Sports Extraordinary Weekend Edition. What a weekend it has been, especially in the world of football. Talking about the National Youth Games, Delta State has conquered the rest of the 36 states here in Nigeria. But that will be it until when we return again next weekend. Remember, peace and unity are clearly pathways to progress. Always enjoy here, Atlantic Television Network.